Hello and welcome back to Gapeys Garden. We're in the greenhouse right now and I wanted to show you the peppers. So this here is the Chinense side of the greenhouse and these have really taken off in the last month. So let's take a closer look. So look at this massive jungle we have going on here. I mean, everything is kind of getting all mashed together and it's hard to tell what's what. We've got this guy here that's sticking out, coming out the top there. These are getting way bigger than I expected and I probably should start pruning these back a little bit because the season is starting to get close to an end and we want as many pods to ripen as possible. So I really need to cut these back and see if I can get some more fruit to set. So let's take a look at each variety that we have here. So here on the very end is the smallest pepper that we have. It hasn't grown quite as much as the others. And this is the chocolate linzo from Kang Star. So there's two of these. If you saw my last video of my pepper update last month, I did top one of them and didn't top the other. So this front one is the one that I didn't top, and it actually had a lot more pods growing than the one in the back. But now the one in the back is actually shaded quite a bit by these other peppers. So it's going to be hard to do a good comparison because this one gets more light now. We do have a few pods that are starting to ripen up, so it has a really pretty kind of a maroon chocolate color. So let's see if we could get a closer look at the one in the back. Last month there wasn't really hardly any pods set on it. So let's see how it looks now. So this branch here is not part of that plant. So I may trim that off so it has more room. So here we go. So we've got a lot more pods starting to set since last month. You can see all these pods in here. We've got a nice cluster of pods up here and then a bunch more in back. So it's really set a lot of pods in the last month, so that's pretty awesome. I'm gonna have a ton of pods, so I'll have to make a sauce or something out of those. So the pepper that's right next door to that one is another Kang Star cross. This one is called the Texas Chocolate Bonnet, and it was a little bit late to set pods, but it's finally starting to set some, and I think we've actually got some ripe ones down here. Oh yeah, look at that. Let's pick one of these, get a closer look. So this one does have a little bit of green still on it, but it's mostly ripe. That's a really beautiful pod. But we've got quite a few pods set. Actually, there's quite a few that are ripening up back there. They aren't quite bonnet shaped. They're a little bit longer, I think. But they're a nice, pretty good size. Nice color. And then we've got the orange Fatale. I've grown the red Fatale a couple years ago, but I thought I would try the orange one, which is the more traditional variety. And it started out setting pretty small pods, but we've got some a little bit larger size pods setting here. They haven't started ripening, so maybe they'll get a little bit bigger. But we have quite a few that are starting to set in there. I think we've got a ripe one. There's a ripe one back there. So it's a little bit on the small side, but it's much larger than the first pods that it was putting out. And then here we have the Pimenta Puma. This is the only purple leaf variety that I'm growing this year. And it is getting pretty shaded by these other peppers that are in front of it. And I showed before this guy that's coming out the back there, because it just does not have enough room back here. So that's a little bit of a problem. We haven't had too many pods set yet. Let's see if I could find a few to show you. So that's probably one of the bigger pods that are set, and it's starting, I think it starts out purple and then it has a little bit of green, and eventually I think it will turn red. We haven't had any ripe pods that I can see on here yet, but it has not been very productive, probably due to not getting much sun. And here is another tall one. This is the Cookie Monster bubblegum. This is the first bubblegum pepper that I've grown. And this one has struggled really hard to set pods. I think there's only maybe one or two pods set on this entire plant. Let me see I could find at least one for you. Here's one. So there is the biggest pod that I've seen so far. There might be one more hiding in there somewhere. And then behind the Cookie Monster bubblegum, we've got the orange Thai pepper. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you can see lots of pods set on there despite it being pretty shaded by other plants. You can't even see it really, but it's looking pretty good despite not getting much sun. We have lots of pods there that are ready to harvest. Let's pick one and I'll show you what it looks like. So there we go. Nice pretty color. They're fairly spicy. Great for cooking. And then next to that we have a Tony Sherwood cross called Peachy, and this one too is pretty shaded by the peppers in front. This whole back row is really struggling. We haven't had a whole lot of pods on this one. We've had a few that were really, really tiny, and I thought I saw one. Let's look in the top here. Ignore this volunteer tomato that's taking up a lot of space. Let's see, I thought I saw, there's a pretty good sized pod right here. So it's got a nice light colored pod that will eventually turn peach. And then this one here on the end, I actually didn't even show in my last update because it just looked just terrible. It's been struggling well before I even brought it outside. It had a lot of black spots and leaves were falling, turning yellow. There's still a little bit of damage you can see on some of the leaves, but it's really been struggling pretty much since I started it. But this is the Moruga Red Monster. It's loaded with flowers and it does seem to be doing better since last month. So I don't know if it's gonna set any pods. I don't see any yet, but it's not doing that great. So I'm not sure what's going on with it, but I don't expect much out of it, and I almost took it out of the greenhouse, but I decided to just let it grow and see what happens. All right, let's take a look at the other side of the greenhouse. This is where all the Annuums, and we've got a couple Baccatums there in the back. So let's start here in this corner. This is the Aleppo, and it's kind of leaning to one side. It's got quite a few pods on it actually. So it's doing pretty well. I have picked a couple of them, and it does seem to be hotter than I expected. But it's a really tasty pepper. I've been using a few of them in some cooking, but I think I may save the rest for some hot sauce. And then this one in front here is the Antep acidoma, and you can see the leaves are looking kind of weird. This one had quite a bit of spider mite issues. I think it's getting a little bit better, but we've had a lot of that problem. It's kind of here on the end where I had the melons, and the melons suffered the most from spider mites, and so I think some of those kind of attacked the peppers here on this side that it was closest to. So we're still recovering from that, but we do have quite a few pods set. This one is not ripe yet, but that's what they look like. We've got some pretty good sized ones here in the middle. This one is a little bit smaller, but this one here is monster sized. And we've got a few more pods set back here, but this is a sweet, kind of bell-shaped pepper. I haven't actually tried one yet, but I should be harvesting the first one here this weekend. And here we have the Padron pepper, and this has been my most productive pepper so far this year. I've been mostly picking these when they're green. So you can see a lot of green peppers. So we like to eat these on our pizzas. So we have a pizza oven. So these are great on pizzas. And I've also made them in some stir fries and other recipes, but it's just loaded with pods. I don't think we have any that are red in here, but I think people mostly pick these while they're green. Now this pepper here is really exciting. This is called Aconcagua, and it is a huge sweet pepper. So check out the size of these pods. Oh, it looks like one of them is finally starting to ripen. So we've got a little bit of color right down there on the tip. But that's a pretty decent sized pepper, and it is pretty loaded with peppers too. Normally when you have these big sweet peppers, they're not as productive, but There's probably at least 8 pretty good sized peppers on this plant. And I don't think I had this staked up in the last video, but I read that these do tend to fall over because of the peppers are just so heavy. So I did put a nice big cage around it that's meant for tomatoes, but it works perfect for this pepper. And here we have the Lady Han Gochu, and this one is also on a tomato cage because these do tend to get fairly tall as well. And we've got quite a few ripe peppers down here, and it is a pretty productive pepper as well. So this is one of my favorite varieties. This is the first time I've grown this particular Gochu, the Lady Han, but I do like Gochus in general, and this one is a pretty good one. And this small guy back here, it is growing really, really short. This is another Gochu variety. This is a Korean dark green, but it's just kind of growing bush-like. It's really weird how it's growing, but it's got, if we lift up the branches here, it's got tons and tons. Look at that. Look at all those pods. It's pretty crazy. Lots of ripe ones, lots of green ones. So I think normally, well, it's called Korean dark green, so I'm not sure if that means you're supposed to pick them when they're green, but I've picked a few when they're green and when they're red, and they're both pretty tasty. Here we have a sweet pepper that I got from Timothy Moultrup from Pepper Lovers Community, and he calls this the Chloe's Sweet Tangerine after his daughter, and it is a very, very sweet pepper. So we've got lots of pods in here, and they ripen to a nice kind of a yellowish orange color. Let's pick this one. So here is what they look like, but it's very sweet. I really like this variety, but he originally got these from a grocery store and just has grown them out and stabilized them after several years of growing them. And I would definitely grow this one again. And next to that, we have a similar variety that is a sweet pepper, similar kind of a shape, very productive. This one is the Sweet Dream, and it's not quite as sweet as the Chloe's Tangerine, but it's still a pretty good pepper. So I've been using these on salads mostly. This here is the Tinkerbell, and Tinkerbells I believe come in different colors, but this one happens to be an orange variety, and it gets some little tiny, well, kind of small little bell-shaped peppers. Let's pick one here. So this is about the size that they come in, a nice orange color. They have really thick walls, but they're not as sweet as I was hoping. So I don't think I'll be growing that one again, but it is really productive, and if you like productive sweet peppers, this would be a good one to try. And here we have another Gochu variety, except I don't know what this one is called. I got the seeds from Kangstar several years ago, and I've been growing it every single year because I just love this particular variety. But I'm on a quest, as I've mentioned before, on trying to figure out which variety it is. So far it's actually the closest to the Lady Han over here. Not quite exactly the same, but very similar. And then this is, I think this is the tallest pepper in the greenhouse. This is the Piri Piri, and it is probably the most productive one, actually. I had said before that the Padron was the most productive, but as far as number of pods, this one definitely beats the Padron, but the pods are definitely also much smaller. But they start out this kind of a light, very light green color, and then it ripens. Let's see if I could pick one here. There we go. It ripens to a red color. So this is kind of a more like a dark orange, I guess. But these are actually really tasty, and I'm really looking forward to making a sauce out of these peppers. But this is the only one in the greenhouse that's a Baccatum variety. And Piri Piris also come in Annuums and I think a few others. But this one here is the Baccatum version. Now the last pepper in the greenhouse here is the Violet Sparkle, and this one is probably the smallest. I don't know what's going on with it this year, but last year it was much bigger and much more productive. I have harvested a few pods off of it already, and it does look like it's got some kind of damage. Maybe some spider mites got to it as well. But we've got, you can see it's got a pretty purple colored pods, and then they eventually ripen to this dark red color. But this is a very sweet variety, one of my favorites. So this is the, I think, second time I've grown it. I tried to do a cross of it with the, I think it was the Lemon Dream earlier this year, but unfortunately the flowers ended up falling off, so my cross was not successful this time. And here we have the only container pepper. This is my Lemon Drop and Gochu cross, and this thing is loaded with ripe pods, and I need to get some of these picked. The leaves look a little droopy. I think it probably could use a little water, but it was kind of hot today. I think it got up to 80 degrees or so. So I need to give this one some water and it should perk back up. But I've got some straw here inside the pot to help keep the moisture in, which seems to be helping quite a bit. The chickens are attacking the nasturtiums that are growing outside of this fence. They just love them. Now let's take a look at the peppers we have here in the bed that we have outside of the greenhouse. These are all Annuum, and we've got a few Baccatums there in the back. This one here is the lemon spice jalapeno, and we have some nasturtiums here that I keep cutting back because they're kind of getting in the way a little bit, but we've got a few peppers on here. I have picked a few of them, mostly unripe ones though, because I needed jalapenos for different recipes, but I don't see any ripe ones. So they do seem to be taking a lot longer to ripen than some of the other varieties. And then next we have Sandia, and this one here is pretty loaded with pods. I got the seeds from my mom of this one. Let's get on this side. You can see lots of pods in there. So I think sometimes people pick these when they're green, but I might wait until they ripen to pick these guys. This one here is the Tap de Corti, and the pods on this one are growing like straight up. It's kind of an interesting, some peppers just happen to grow that way, and this is one of them. Oh, we have one pod here that's got a little bit of damage, so something was maybe chewing on that one. But I don't see any ripe ones here. This one was really late setting pod, but it's looking like it's starting to catch up and has lots of pods set now. So these middle three peppers that I have in this bed are the Holy Trinity of Mexican peppers. The first one here is the Poblano, and we are taking a while for these to ripen, but I think they're finally starting to. That one's not. Oh, this one down here is starting to turn chocolate. And then the next pepper in the Holy Trinity is the Guajillo. So this is one I started from seeds that I saved from store-bought dried peppers. And we've got quite a few pods set on there, but I'm gonna wait till those ripen, and then I plan on dehydrating these and turning them into a powder, I think. And then the last pepper we have in the Holy Trinity is the Holy Moly, which is a pasilla type pepper. And we have lots of pods on there. This one is just starting to turn ripe. It's turning a little bit lighter green. But let's see, I think we've got some that are here in the back that are working up a little bit more. So you can see that one's kind of a darkish red color. So I think that's pretty close to being ripe, but I plan on drying these guys as well. And then the last three peppers in the back here are all Baccatum varieties. The first one here is the Ahi Lolo. So this is a cross that I got from Sunrise Pepper Labs, and I think we've got a few ripe ones in there. Let's take one out here. So it's got a nice red color. This is actually the first one that I picked. There's a few ripe ones in there, it looks like, but I can't wait to try this one. Then the next one here is supposed to be a Sugar Rush stripe, and I've been waiting to see some stripes, but so far I'm not seeing any. I think this is the one that's closest to ripening. It's looking like it's just staying peach color. So I should have seen some stripes starting to form on those by now, I would think. And then the last one back here is a cross of the Sugar Rush stripe and the Ahi Tangerine. And I have not seen any ripe ones back here, but this is the shape that we're getting on most of the pods back here. Kind of a little bit shorter of a Sugar Rush. This one here is the one that's closest to ripening. It's starting to get a little bit of orange coloring. So that is going to be a fun one. We'll see if it gets any stripes on it. So this is the F2 version of this variety, and the F1 had stripes, but so far I'm not seeing any stripes on this F2 variety. There's a little bit of purpling on some of the pods. Lastly, let's take a look at how the pepper in cans are doing. This one here on the left is the chocolate linzo, and most of these pods are now ripe. We've got a few back here that are still green, but most of them have been ripening. It's been a struggle trying to keep these watered and not dried out. So this one's in the Bad Granny cider can, and I think we're about ready for a harvest. Then next up is the Calico. So this one has some pretty variegated leaves, and the peppers on this one are almost all ripe too. So they've ripened to a red, and this one here is in the Watts Brewing Waggle Dance can. And these are feeling pretty light, so I've been having to water these pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, depending how hot it is. And then lastly, we have the Yellow Zamora, and this is in the Locust Cider Rosemary Plum cider can. And these are all ripening to a nice pretty yellow, but they start out this black color. So that's it for the peppers in the garden this August. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.